Exposed. The sinister secrets revealed in 7 forbidden films that haunted my every night. Sara had always thought Willow Creek was a fortress. The kind of quiet suburb where doors were left unlocked and neighbors borrowed sugar like it was a common courtesy. But one eerie night would unravel everything she believed about safety. When she found that dusty film reel in the attic, she had no idea it would lead to 7 films that would haunt her every thought, the kind of films that seeped into dreams and twisted them into nightmares. As she and Ethan settled into their living room, the whir of the projector filled the air with a heavy tension. Shadows squirmed on their walls, flickers of light revealing faces of long-lost figures. The first film, a grainy tale of betrayal, started innocently enough. But just as the tale unraveled, so did Sara's stomach. Each frame was filled with betrayal, darkness closing in around the characters. She fidgeted, feeling the hairs on her neck prickle, a chill breathing down her spine. That night, laughter turned to gasps. Their fun lay abandoned, buried beneath each sinister sequence. As the reels played on, so did the terrifying realities. There was a film about a family that vanished, their last screams echoing against the backdrop of Willow Creek, silenced just as they spoke. Sara's heart raced, that familiar dread pooling in her stomach. The stories grew darker, the shadows stalking closer. Every tale revealed threads that twisted to her life. The uneasiness that had always lingered in the background surged with every film. Muffled cries felt like they were whispering through the thin walls of their home. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The credits rolled, leaving a heavy silence in their small living room. A sense of dread hung thick, choking the air. Days later, the whispers grew louder in the night. The neighbor's dog was missing. Then muffled cries drifted unnaturally through the dark. Each passing encounter with the townsfolk felt different. Their smiles were masks, eyes darting as if they shared a dangerous secret. Paranoia gripped Sara like a vice. She felt the world outside slipping through her fingers. Without hesitation, she reached out to the police for help, but they met her with laughter. It stung worse than imagined. Who would consider her fears credible? Alone in her community, the fortress felt more like a cage. Each creaking floorboard reminded Sara that danger was closer than it seemed. Got to keep Ethan safe. But as she felt eyes following her, it became clear the predator from the films was no longer fiction. The sudden disappearance of the dog and the terrifying cries at night were too unnerving to simply dismiss. It wasn't paranoia, it was survival. In her enclosed world, an undeniable truth was creeping in, one that hinted the monster wasn't lurking far away. It could very well be living next door. What other dark truths awaited her? The shadows grew longer. She could feel them closing in, wrapping around her mind like a suffocating shroud. Sara's heart raced as she realized that their idol was merely a facade. The real horror had only just begun. The nights slipped into days, each sunrise sharpening the dread that clung to Sara like a wet blanket. Ethan, oblivious to the encroaching terror, went about his routine, but the brightness in his laughter felt like a taunt. Her hands trembled when she poured his cereal, the sound of the flakes cracking echoing in the eerie stillness of their home. Sara couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. Every time she glanced outside, it felt as if someone stood just out of sight, waiting for her to drop her guard. She avoided the neighbors, retreating into her own cocoon of anxiety. But Willow Creek was a small town. Avoiding familiar faces was impossible. At night, the whispers grew louder. They wove through her dreams like smoke, jagged and dark. She couldn't tell if they were her fears manifesting or something more sinister. Each time she closed her eyes, her mind flooded with images from the films, the screaming families, the betrayals, the shadows that always seemed to be waiting just outside the light. Desperate for clarity, she decided the truth lay within those reels. If she could just gather the last remnants of courage, perhaps they could watch the remaining films together. After some debate, she broached the subject with Ethan. You know those films they might explain what has been happening in town. Her voice quivered as she spoke, hoping to ignite the curiosity in his eyes again. Ethan raised an eyebrow, playfulness flickering before concern filtered through. You really think those are causing all this? It's just movies, right? It's not just movies. Some parts feel real. It's like they're warning us. Reluctantly, he agreed, a trace of worry etched on his face that didn't escape her attention. Later that night, as the projector hummed to life, the air grew thick with anticipation. The second film clicked into place, the flickering light casting erratic shadows around the room. This story unfolded in a quaint but eerie town, not unlike Willow Creek. The characters reveled in their peace until dark secrets cloaked their existence. Sara leaned in, absorbing every detail. As the suspense escalated, a chilling realization washed over her. The eerie laughter and dark mischief of the characters seemed all too familiar. They thrived in their denials, just as her neighbors did. Just as the climax crested, the film shifted to the scene of a large group gathered at a town hall meeting, their faces shrouded in darkness, illuminated only by flickering lights. Their laughter turned menacing as they turned to the screen, as if warning her about the real dangers that lay ahead. No, this can't be happening, Sara whispered, feeling the room grow colder. Ethan reached for her hand, but before she could respond, the projector sputtered and died, plunging them into utter darkness. Did you see that? They looked right at us. She gasped, panic coursing through her veins. Suddenly, a loud thud came from outside, a sound discordant with the stillness of the night. Fear clawed at her throat. What was that? Ethan stood abruptly, his face pale, eyes wide. I'll check, he said, but uncertainty lingered in his voice. No. She grasped his arm, but his resolve didn't falter. He moved towards the door, each step resonating like a drumbeat in her chest. Ethan, please don't. The door creaked ominously as he positioned himself to look out. But as he opened it, a sudden icy breeze swept through the house, extinguishing the last flickers of their safety. The night outside was consumed by shadows, a consuming void that threatened to pull them both in. And in that moment, Sara knew they were not just unraveling the mystery. They were walking straight into the heart of darkness. What awaited them in the shadows beyond those walls? The walls seemed to bend as if whispering her name, urging her to come closer. Ethan hesitated at the threshold, his hand gripping the doorframe as if clinging to the last vestige of safety. The stillness outside was suffocating. A vast void stretched before them, darker than the blackest night. Sara could feel her heart pounding in her ears, drowning out the echoes of laughter from the film, a ghostly soundtrack, now muted by the fear that enveloped them. Ethan, please. Her voice trembled, but he seemed entranced, caught in the web of quiet terror beyond the door. With a determined shove, he eased the door open further. The creak echoed like a warning, slicing through the heavy silence. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, and Sara thought she saw a figure flicker at the edge of the porch, just outside the reach of the light. Did you see that? She whispered urgently, her breath hitching. Ethan squinted into the murky abyss. It's probably just what? She cut in, panic coursing through her. Just nothing? Just a figment of my imagination? As if answering her, a second thud resounded, louder this time, shaking the bones of the house. It came from the back. The familiar wooden swing creaked softly, swinging steadily in the stillness. Stay inside, Ethan ordered, finally stepping over the threshold. The warmth of the house was replaced by a chilling draft that made Sara shiver. She struggled with the urge to follow him, to keep him safe, but fear anchored her feet to the ground. Ethan, she called, but he was gone, swallowed by the shadows. Time stretched and distorted in those agonizing moments. The absence of his presence weighed heavily on her, making the air feel thick. She crept to the doorway, peering into the night. The porch lamp flickered as if testing its own resolve. Ethan, she fought the urge to scream, forcing herself to remain quiet. Then she saw a figure standing by the swing, the contours barely visible in the dim light. It was too still, too unnatural. A wave of nausea swept over her as she took a cautious step outside, her instincts screaming for her to retreat. Ethan, she managed, her voice scarcely above a whisper. Nope, came a voice that sent chills running down her spine, deeper and raspier than any she'd ever heard. The figure turned slightly, revealing a flash of pale skin and hollowed cheeks. The man, if it was even a man, grinned, lips stretching impossibly wide. Your husband is busy, looking for answers, just like you. Sara stumbled back, shock blurring her vision. What do you mean? Let him go? The figure stepped closer, liquid shadows swirling around him, as if he were made of the dark itself. They will not let him go. They never do, not when the truth is so close. The town has its secrets, and it doesn't take kindly to meddling. A surge of adrenaline jolted through her. What are you? Just an observer, he said, tilting his head at an unnatural angle. But sometimes, the watchers become part of the show, especially when the curtain rises. Before she could comprehend his words, a crashing sound erupted from behind the house, followed by Ethan's panicked shout. Sara. Her heart raced. She had a choice: confront the sinister figure or rush to the man she loved. But the air around her buzzed, thick with danger, the weight of her decision pressing down like lead. Help him, she screamed, filling the night with her desperation. The figure stayed still, a thin smile brimming with malice. Only if you're willing to see. It's not just the town that reveals its horrors. It's in the secrets you keep. The films are only the beginning. Sara clenched her fists, torn between fear and fury. She needed to choose. Did she want to unveil the truth, risking Ethan's safety? Did she trust a ghostly stranger lurking in the dark? And as she stood there, caught in the grip of indecision, the shadows shifted again, swallowing the last remnants of light. Then silence, until Ethan's voice erupted once more, tinged with urgent fear. Get inside. Now. The weight of darkness hung even heavier, as the echoes of fate loomed over them. What would they uncover together, and would either of them come back from the edge of the abyss? Sara's heart thundered as she sunk back against the railing, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. She could barely think through the haze of panic. The stranger's words echoed in her mind, merging with Ethan's frantic shouts. Get inside. Now. But what was happening? Why was he calling for her? Just then, a sudden crash behind her jolted Sara back to reality. The figure by the swing remained still, but darkness seemed to stretch and pulse, as if alive and hungry. She didn't have time to dwell on his unnerving presence. Ethan, she cried again, urgency propelling her feet forward. She darted from the porch toward the rear of the house, her skin prickling with awareness of the lurking threat. Each step felt like a plunge into icy water, a battle against every instinct that screamed for her to turn back. The shadows danced around her as she rounded the corner of the house, the faint light of the moon barely illuminating the path ahead. Ethan was there, wrestling with something unseen, something that clawed at him in the blackness. Ethan, she yelled, her voice cracking as he turned, his face illuminated by a flash of moonlight. The fear in his eyes cut deeper than the pale figure lurking just outside their sight. Get back, Sara. It's before he could finish, a wild scream erupted from deep within the shadows. The very air thickened, weighing her down as if a heavy fog had rolled in from nowhere. It was like the sound of nails on a chalkboard, twisting through her brain, driving her into a frenzy of panic. Ethan, what is happening? She shouted, taking a step closer against her better judgment, the nightmare unfolding in front of her. Don't come any closer. His warning fell like a dead weight. The shadows surged around him, clawing at his back and wrapping him in tendrils of fear. She could see his muscles tense, straining against something much stronger than he was. Then, behind him, she caught movement a flicker, like a fragment of darkness slipping away. Was there something else out there? Another figure lurking, waiting to strike? Move. Get out. Ethan's voice was laced with desperation, pushing her toward the door. It sparked something within her autopilot kicking in as her feet moved instinctively, heart racing. But then came a sickening pop, the sound of bones breaking. Sara froze, terror gripping her throat as she gasped. Ethan. He grimaced, trying to fight through the dark that was overwhelming him. The very ground seemed to fall away beneath them, swallowing the yard in shadows that no light could escape. With each moment, the pull of the dark grew stronger, clawing at both of them. She fought the urge to scream, the terror of losing him pressing like a vice. You have to fight. Fight it. He glared back at her, a flicker of defiance sparking in his eyes, but despair clouded it. I don't know how much longer, Sara. You have to trust. A howl rose from the depths, drowning out his words. The shadows erupted, swirling violently around Ethan, yanking him toward whatever horror was contained within. Sara screamed, reaching out, but found herself trapped by an unseen force. The figure from earlier was nearer now, eyes glinting with malicious glee. "Do you want to see? Are you ready to know?" "No, not now." Panic surged through her like a tide, but before any thought could fully form, the world split around her. In an instant, she found herself standing back on the porch, frozen in time. The house loomed before her, a solid fortress against the terrors that pursued them. But what had happened to Ethan? Heart pounding, she felt a sizzling intensity at her back. The dark figure was no longer there, but she could still sense the threat circling like a vulture. He had vanished into thin air, but his presence lingered, a ghost woven into the very walls of this house filled with secrets. What have I missed? Her mind shifted through the fragments. Had she truly witnessed all that chaos, or had it slipped through a veil she couldn't pierce? A low growl vibrated from behind her, and she spun to see shadows pooling like liquid fear, swelling into grotesque shapes. Where was Ethan? A single thought ripped through her. What had she traded away by stepping into the dark? "What do you know?" she whispered to the void, scared of the answer, but no one answered. The air thickened with foreboding, the unyielding dread wrapping tight around her throat, as if daring her to step forward again. She needed to take control. She had to find him. But could she handle the truth? The weight of the night stilled for just a heartbeat, and in the quiet, the answer came perilously close. "Come and see, if you dare." The darkness shifted, beckoning her once more. The path was set, yet the horrors of this place loomed ahead, waiting just for her. What would she uncover next? She took a breath, feeling the electric charge of fear dancing on her skin. Her legs refused to comply, frozen by doubt and terror. But there was no time to lose. Ethan needed her. The shadows curled closer, almost whispering, taunting her to delve into the dark abyss. With shaking hands, she reached for the door, heart hammering like a caged bird. Each creak of the wood beneath her fingers seemed to echo an omen. Sliding the door open, she stepped inside, the scent of must and mildew engulfing her. The house felt alive, breathing around her as the murmur of hidden secrets filled the air. Sara, the voice was faint, weak, a thread of sound weaving through the oppressive gloom. "Ethan," she called into the silence. Her echo bounced back, mocking her. How could she find him in this maze of shadows? The hallway stretched out before her, a long tunnel of potential horrors waiting to reveal themselves. She tightened her grip on the flashlight, its beam flickering with uncertainty. "Stay close," she commanded herself, even as the walls seemed to shift, playing tricks on her mind. She tiptoed towards the living room, every fiber of her being alert. The flicker of her flashlight caught a glimpse of something on the wall, a smudge, an unidentifiable mark that seemed to pulse. Her heart raced. It looked like a face trapped within the plaster, eyes wide with terror. "Is this part of what I traded?" she wondered. Did it have a connection to the presence that had engulfed Ethan? Brushing her fingers against the wall, a jolt coursed through her like electric shock. She yanked her hand back, eyes darting around as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. Was that a shift of movement in the corner of her vision? "Ethan," she shouted again, desperate, pleading for any sign of him. The house responded, the heartbeat of the night growing louder, vibrating through the floorboards. A low whisper reached her ears, chilling her to the bone. "You shouldn't have come back." Sara turned sharply. "Who is there? Show yourself." Nothing materialized but a heavy silence, suffocating, thick enough to choke on. Panic clawed at her throat. Where was Ethan? That growl returned, resonating from deep within the house, fuller now, as if it surrounded her. Shadows writhed closer, elongated fingers stretching towards her, craving her essence. The furniture had begun to morph, tables bending and stretching like claws, mockery lacing their shapes. Suddenly, she spotted a flicker of movement near the stairwell. It twisted and contorted, a horrifying silhouette melding with the darkness. Was it Ethan? Was he trapped? Her heart raced as she moved forward, wary but determined. Each footstep felt like a march toward doom, but she couldn't stop now. The staircase loomed ahead, each step worn and hollow, creaking underfoot. She climbed, breath hitching with every motion, a dread anticipation flooding her veins. At the top, the hallway stretched out, doorways yawning open into pitch-black rooms. Her mouth went dry. Where to go? A door at the end of the hall swung ajar, revealing a sliver of sickly light that flickered as if in mockery. The whispers grew louder. Join us, join him no. She shouted, defiance igniting her spirit. I want tea. But the feelings clawed at her, a tantalizing pull urging her forward, promising reunion at a price she wasn't sure she could pay. The hairs on her neck stood on end, as if the darkness had taken on a life of its own, pressing against her, suffocating her resolve. She stood frozen. That same voice echoed again, maddeningly close. Come and see his new truth. What did it mean? Did that mean Ethan was gone forever? She hesitated, teetering on the brink of decision. What have I truly uncovered? She whispered to the oppressive shadows, uncertainty gripping her with icy fingers. And then, emerging from the dark corner of the room, a figure stepped forth. It was Ethan, or what remained of him. Fear surged through her like a storm. Help me, he rasped, the words a shuddering plea wrapped in despair. But was this the Ethan she knew? Or had the darkness twisted him into something else entirely? As she stared into his shadowed eyes, Sara realized she was on the verge of discovering the truth, the sinister secret that had ensnared them both. And the darkness around her began to close in. The darkness thickened, wrapping around her like a shroud, and Sara felt her breath quicken. The figure before her, once so familiar, now twisted and deformed by shadow. Ethan's eyes, once bright, now flickered like dying stars, revealing a depth of torment she had never seen before. Ethan? Her voice shook, each syllable a fragile thread in the web of despair. What happened to you? He stepped forward, and the floorboards creaked ominously beneath him. Shadows spilled from his figure, tendrils reaching out, crawling along the walls like hungry serpents. It was wrong. Everything about him was wrong. Part of her yearned to embrace him, but instinct warned her away. They took me, Sara. His voice was distant, as if it came from a place of pure agony, echoing off the walls of her mind. They promised to set me free, but it wasn't what I wanted. What are you talking about? The words tumbled out of her, desperate to grasp any thread of reason. Join us, the whispers returned, layered and seductive, brushing against her skin like a cold caress. Just like I did become one with the darkness. No, she shouted, shaking her head. She could barely think. She wanted to scream, to run, but fear froze her feet to the floor. The house swelled around her, each creak an accusation, every shadow a reminder of her grave mistake. Ethan moved closer, his shadowy form bending unnaturally, as if the darkness itself sought to consume him. You have to understand, there's power here, power that we can harness. But it requires a sacrifice. A sacrifice. Her chest tightened, as chilling realizations clawed at her insides. Was it too late for him? For her? Had she walked into a trap laid out long before she ever entered this forsaken place? Ethan's hand gripped a space between them, fingers curling as if trying to weave strands of light into the oppressive murk. It's lost, Sara, I'm lost. But I can show you the way out. You just have to let go, let go. The words slithered through her, wrapping themselves around her heart. What would that mean? Would she also become a servant of that ancient malevolence that had ensnared Ethan? The room shuddered, as if responding to her internal struggle, the walls vibrating with a forgotten fury, the air thickening like molasses. Shadows surged forward, clawing at her, almost eager to draw her into that void. What was it they wanted? Why did they whisper promises? Ethan's figure flickered behind them, the boundaries between his form and the creeping darkness blurring, giving him an ethereal quality. You can't fight it, Sara. It's as much a part of you as it is of me. Embrace it. No, she screamed, shaking her head violently, her mind racing with a whirlwind of doubts and fears. In a moment of clarity, she thought of escape, of the way back. But how could she escape when he was trapped in the very darkness that haunted him? Suddenly, a sound echoed throughout the house, a deep, rumbling growl resonating from below, shaking the ceiling tiles, catching her attention. It was the embodiment of the darkness itself, a living entity demanding recognition and loyalty. Choose, Ethan urged, a wild desperation in his voice that sent chills down her spine. Join me or leave forever. Her blood ran cold. Could she leave him behind? Was there a way to save him without losing herself? A choice lay before her, heavy with significance. Sara took a step back, heart thumping violently. The shadows pressed closer, a tidal wave of darkness and despair. In the stifling silence that followed, she could feel her pulse racing, closing in on her own truth. How far was she willing to go to save the man she loved? As the walls shuddered and the whispers grew more frantic, something deep within her stirred. A flicker of defiance ignited. "I want to be a part of this," she shouted, loud and resolute, and she turned to run. But before she reached the staircase, a hand shot out of the darkness, wrapping around her wrist with a grip that chilled her to the bone. "Join us," it echoed again, this time drowning out any hope of escape. With every ounce of strength, she twisted to break free, but his grasp was unyielding. Shadows flared and shifted, a monstrous entity forming behind her, embodying the fears of souls unwilling to let go, trapping them in an endless void. "Why won't you listen?" Ethan's voice strained through, layered with pain and dread, barely recognizable. The darkness grew, expanding hungrily, and her stomach twisted with a sickening fear. Behind her, the shape loomed larger, ready to claim another day as the shadows conspired around her. She knew a reckoning was imminent. Could she untangle herself from fate, or had she already crossed the point of no return? "Help me," she screamed, tears streaming down her cheeks, knowing she was running out of time. The whispers erupted into a wailing chorus, spiraling into madness. And then, in the fray, something caught her eye, a flicker of light at the end of the hall, dancing like a beacon among the shadows, promising escape or danger. "Run," she urged herself again, just as the darkness lunged. But the question hung in the air, tantalizing yet terrifying. What awaited her in that flickering light? Her heart hammered as she struggled against the relentless grip of the shadows. The cold, clammy tendrils tightened around her wrist, dragging her deeper into the void. Panic surged within her, a violent tide of dread that threatened to swallow her whole. But that flicker of light, it pulsed, promising salvation even as the darkness howled around her. Sara forced herself to pivot, her breath coming in quick gasps, her pulse a frenetic drum in her ears. With all the strength she could muster, she lunged toward the light, her feet pounding against the creaking floor as she wrenched herself free from the shadow's grip. "Ethan," she cried, desperation lacing her voice as she turned back for just a moment. "I can save you." But his expression flickered, shifting between moments of clarity and torment as the shadows obscured his face. Don't come back." His voice splintered, fractured by the weight of a choice that had already driven a chasm between them. But yes, she sprinted toward the light. The whispers crescendoed around her, shrill wails clawing at her sanity. Each step felt like running through thick fog, each heartbeat a reminder of the looming malevolence. She could sense the darkness rallying, feeding on her fear, trying to claw her back into its embrace. The hallway grew narrower as she neared the lighted doorway. A window? A way out? The walls seemed to pulse around her, shrieking warnings of what waited on the other side. With one final burst of energy, she threw herself toward the flickering illumination, arms outstretched. The moment she breached its edge, a shock of cold air enveloped her, and she stumbled into a space that felt like stepping into another world, a stark contrast to the suffocating gloom she had just escaped. But the shadows didn't retreat. They swarmed at the threshold, writhing with furious energy, still clawing, still hungry. A figure began to take form at the edge of the light, a silhouette that emerged with a haunting familiarity. Sara squinted, her heart sinking. "Ethan?" she whispered, the name barely escaping her lips. "Join me," he breathed, voice smooth yet laced with an undercurrent of menace. The darkness swirled around him like a living cloak, twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed to mock her. "No," she gasped, stepping backward, her back pressing against the doorway she barely escaped. "You're not him. You're lost in this nightmare." "Am I?" he countered, a strange echo in his voice that sent tremors through her body. "You think you know who I am, but you don't see the truth in the power here." Sara's hands trembled, confusion spiraling through her as the light flickered, warping the space around her. It was dangerously close to guttering out, and with it, any hope of escape. The deeper shadows pooled behind Ethan, pulling him in while tendrils lashed out, trying to reach for her. "They're here for you too, Sara. They want you to be one with us. It's freeing if you only let go." "No, I want tea." She felt a surge of defiance, but deep within, a part of her quivered at the alluring promise of power and release. Just then, the floor erupted beneath her, splitting open with a bone-rattling roar. Sara's breath hitched as the ground churned, and she was thrown into a whirlwind of chaos. The light flickered violently, casting monstrous shapes across the walls. "Make your choice," Ethan shouted, his figure fading like a memory in the ever-encroaching dark. The words faded into a cacophony of whispers, an echo of her own desire, and every hesitation she harbored. With all of her strength, Sara bolted forward, diving toward the core of light. She felt the shadows clutch at her heels, dragging her back, their icy tendrils entwining around her ankles. As she crossed the threshold, the shadows bellowed in fury, a sound that churned her stomach and sent a jolt of fear racing through her. The light dimmed, just as she felt the solid grip of the darkness release her. But now she was somewhere else, disoriented and breathless, with nothing but the faint glow illuminating a series of doors lining a long corridor. Each one seemed marked with a name, and among them, a name that sent a vicious chill down her spine: Ethan. She hesitated, anxiety gripping her heart in a vice. Each shimmering door pulsed with memories of pain and anguish. In that moment, she understood. Each door held a piece of him, or perhaps a piece of what he had become. Why does it always lead back to him? She whispered breathlessly, peering down the corridor. The answer hovered just out of reach, shrouded in the thickening darkness behind her. The corridor yawned ahead, filled with uncertainty and treachery. Would she dare confront what lay behind that door, or would she be forever haunted by the shadows of her choice? Desperately, she took a step toward the door, every fiber of her being crying out for an answer, yet fear rooting her to the spot. What awaited her inside? Could she find Ethan again? Or would she fall victim to the very darkness she fled? With a deep breath, she reached for the doorknob, knowing that whatever lay beyond could seal her fate forever. The doorknob was cold beneath her trembling fingers, a sharp contrast to the heat of her rising panic. Sara inhaled deeply, steeling herself against the suffocating dread that twisted like a serpent in her gut. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and run, to escape the secrets lurking behind that door, but a relentless curiosity propelled her forward. As she turned the knob, a creaking sound echoed like a mournful wail, resonating deep in the corridor. The door swung open slowly, revealing a dimly lit room filled with an oppressive silence that pressed tight against her chest. Shadows danced across the walls, shifting and flickering, casting monstrous shapes that sent her heart into a frenzy. Inside, a single flickering bulb swung precariously from the ceiling, casting a sickly yellow light that barely penetrated the darkness. The walls were lined with mirrors, each reflecting her haunted expression back at her. But it wasn't just her image that stared back. Something shifted behind her in the glass, a darkness that felt alive watching. "Ethan?" she called out, her voice cracking as she stepped inside. The air hung heavy, thick with a sense of foreboding. A figure loomed in the corner of the room, barely visible, shrouded in shadow. Hope mingled with dread as she squinted against the dim light, desperate to see if it was him. "Is that you? Do you really want to know?" The voice was smooth, a chilling mimicry of familiarity that sent shivers down her spine. Sara's heart raced as she drew closer, the truth wrestling with her every breath. If this was Ethan, this entity that echoed his voice, was it truly him, or was it the monster created in the depths of her nightmares? The figure stepped into the dim light, revealing features that twisted her heart into knots. He looked like Ethan, yet his eyes were pools of darkness, reflecting nothing but emptiness. What had these shadows done to him? "Help me," he whispered, his voice thick with anguish. A wave of terror washed over her, but also an urge to reach out, to save him from whatever hell had gripped him. "I'll try," she cried, though her heart recoiled at the thought. "Can you really?" The smile that formed on his face was unsettling, a grotesque parody of warmth. "You've already chosen the path, Sara. You and I are bound by these shadows now. They know your weaknesses. They know your fear." "No," she stepped back, shaking her head in disbelief, while rising in her throat. "You're not him. You're twisted by this darkness. The walls of the room began to tremble as whispers cascaded down, echoing her words back at her, but twisted, mocking. Not him, not her, forever bound. Her world narrowed into a tunnel of chaos, as pictures flashed in her mind, memories of laughter, love, but also the shadows that loomed over them. Each door she had seen in the corridor, each name written on its surface, held secrets she wasn't ready to uncover. A slight breeze rustled the air, and with it came an acrid scent, like burning paper. From the corners of the room, shadows sprouted like tendrils, creeping closer, reaching for her. Each heartbeat drummed in her ears, drowning out thoughts, suffocating her ability to reason. Panic surged anew, flooding her senses. "I want to let them take me," she screamed, bursting backwards toward the door, but it slammed shut with a deafening thud, sealing her fate. Join us," the whispers chorused, a sickening collective voice that rose like a tide, crashing down with a cacophony of dreadful promises. The shadows pulled her closer, rippling with hunger. No. With a surge of adrenaline, she hurled herself forward, baring her fists, fighting against the tide of darkness. Suddenly, a sharp pain lanced through her wrist. Cold fingers had gripped her from behind. She gasped, twisting to free herself, but the shadows only tightened their grip. "Choice is an illusion, Sara. You were never meant to leave." In that moment, a door to her left swung open, revealing a blinding light that beckoned her. Hope flared, and just as suddenly, a piercing scream filled the room, Ethan's voice raw and desperate. Catching a glimpse of him, lost in torment, the choice loomed ahead of her. Could she shatter the dark and save him? Or would she succumb to the haunting whispers, forever trapped in the void that devoured every shred of hope? The darkness lunged as she stood paralyzed at the threshold, breathless, staring into the abyss of her choices. What would she choose next? Would the truth set her free, or plunge them both into deeper despair? The heat of that blinding light burned Sara's vision as she stood frozen, caught between the shadows and the inviting glow. It pulsed like a heartbeat, urging her to make a choice, while Ethan's cry reverberated in her mind. Time seemed to stretch and warp, dragging her deeper into uncertainty and dread. "Help me." His voice echoed again, but this time it sounded distant, fading. The shadows shuddered, as if in response, pulsating and swirling like a living entity eager to consume her. With a fierce resolve, she hurled herself toward the door. The light enveloped her, a comforting warmth against the frigid grip of the darkness that clawed at her. Just as she thought she'd made it, a powerful force slammed into her back, hurling her back into the murky depths of the cold room. The familiar voice transformed into a haunting chant, weaving through her thoughts. "Join us, forever bound." It felt like a warning, echoing the choices she had made, the late nights spent avoiding the truth, ignoring the signs. Shadows coiled around her legs, pulling her down, whispering secrets of failures and regrets. "No," she screamed, dragging herself forward, pushing against the oppressive weight. She could not let them win. Not now. The flickering bulb buzzed violently, and in that instant, the shadows shrank back, revealing a third door. Intrigued, Sara stumbled toward it, heart racing with a mix of fear and curiosity. She reached for the handle, cool to the touch, and twisted it slowly. With a hesitant creak, the door opened, unveiling a room vibrant with color, bright and joyous. Images flickered across the walls, a golden summer day, laughter, reminders of what she'd lost. The exhilaration of joyful memories was intoxicating, almost unbearable. But as she stepped inside, the warmth turned sour. Laughter faded into screams, and the light flickered violently. The cheerful images morphed into grotesque parodies, each snapshot twisting into a nightmare. Faces blurred into gaping mouths, silent cries straining against a veil of laughter that mocked her. "Leave. You don't belong here." A new voice boomed, deeper, heavier than Ethan's. The shadows pulsed angrily, rearranging themselves, ripping open cracks that throbbed with darkness. "You think you can save him? The only way out is through us." Sara's heart thudded in her chest. "I want to let you take him," she yelled, the sense of determination flooding back. "I want to be your pawn." Unseen hands began to tug at her again. Panicking, she darted back toward the door, but it swung shut just as she reached it, sealing her fate once more. The cries from the other side echoed, a desperate combination of fear and yearning. Now trapped, she turned back to the colorful room, which was losing its vibrancy. The walls thickened, displaying flickers that morphed into her friends, her parents frozen in horror, pleading with her to choose. Everything spiraled into chaos, shadows prowling closer, sharp whispers weaving tales of betrayal and despair. The room felt alive, the walls shifting. "What will you sacrifice, Sara?" The deep voice taunted, stretching her name into a sinister melody. "Your love? Your hope?" Words hung in the air, both dreadful and seductive. She dropped to her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Just when she thought the darkness would engulf her, a sliver of clarity pierced through. "I'll fight for us. I will find the truth," she shouted defiantly, though fear gripped her soul like an iron shackle. The moment those words left her lips, the shadows recoiled. Bright lights spilled from the corners of the room, illuminating a path through the dark. With renewed strength, she lunged for the opening. What lay beyond that path? Would she find Ethan, or something far worse waiting for her in the unknown? With every step, the shadows howled, a cacophony of vengeance echoing in her ears. "Don't follow her," they screeched, but she pressed on, uncertainty tightening its grip around her heart. She was trapped, tangled in a web of her own making. But which doorway would she choose next, and at what cost? The light faded, but its warmth lingered. Sara stepped through the threshold with full resolve, her heart pounding each time she remembered Ethan's desperate calls for help. She knew he was somewhere, entangled with the shadows, somewhere just beyond her reach. The air began to shift as she found herself in a small, illuminated room, its walls lined with soft, shimmering mirrors. Each reflection showed her different versions of herself, strong with courage, trembling in fear, determined but hesitant. "Ethan, where are you?" she called, her voice steady. But her heart raced like a wild stallion, as if her call beckoned him. A familiar figure emerged from the far end of the room, shadow creeping but not consuming. Sara gasped as she rushed toward him, relief washing over her. "Ethan." But as she got closer, doubt crept in. This version of Ethan looked different, his face pinched, desperation etched across his features. It was like looking at a photo that was once clear but faded into distortion over time. "Help me," he croaked, shadows writhing behind him as if alive, whispering their dark promises, taunting her with the very essence of despair. "Ethan, I'm here." Her heart hung between hope and fear, knowing this could be a trap. "I'll save you. Just hold on." "No, you don't understand." He strained, pulling his skin tight over bared teeth, a mask of anguish. "It's too late for me. You can't save what is already lost." The shadows pulsed and writhed, feeding off the tension between them, eager to pull her in. "No, I refuse to accept that," she screamed, clenching her fists. "You're still in there. Fight it. Fight them." But the shadows crept closer, leeching life from his words. With every syllable, she sensed his spirit waning. "Join me, come closer, it's better here," he rasped suddenly, a hunger in his voice, the shadows whispering through him, their dark intent dragging at her ankles. "No," she refused to yield. "I'll never join you." It felt like a declaration against the quiet desperation threatening to envelop her. Behind him, a series of mirrors showcased a growing depth of darkness, her own fears refracted back at her. The room thrummed as if alive, the energy swirling and pressing in, shadows ready to leap forward. "Make your choice, Sara." Ethan's voice echoed, but it sounded thin, stretched by the darkness wrapping around him. "They know your weakness. They'll consume you too. Just let it go." But Sara wasn't ready to give in. "No, Ethan, this isn't you. You're stronger than this." She surged forward, reaching out for him, willing strength into her veins. He faltered, shadows flickering at the edges of his face. But the shadows weren't done. "Join us, Sara," they hissed, swarming around her like a mist, filling her vision with the threat of her own buried fears. "Don't you want to be free? Freedom isn't surrender," she shouted, determination igniting within. Suddenly, she spun around, facing the towering mirrors again. Each reflection was an option, a split in reality. They echoed with laughter mocking her doubts, taunting her choices, but one mirror beckoned, pulsating with light amidst the encroaching darkness. Could it be the answer? As shadows dove toward her, she saw flashes of dreams and hopes, the laughter of friends, loved ones, and moments frozen in time. Fight for us. Fight for what you love, she whispered aloud, remembering her fragile moments with Ethan, the laughter, the warmth of shared dreams. Just as she thought she could make it, the shadows surged forward again, this time their grip stronger, wrapping around her legs and arms, pulling her to the ground. She gasped, gripping the floor as they clawed at her. Then, she remembered something: the films. The warnings they held, the twisted secrets reflected her own reality. If this was an illusion, then she had the keys to their demise. Ethan, she cried, crushing the mounting despair instead with every ounce of faith she had left. Come back to me. The shadows tightened their hold, but she willed herself forward, into the brightness of that enticing reflection. Join me, a voice from behind her, something echoing with Ethan's weight, lured her back. But a flicker of resolve carried her, and she lunged forward through that gleaming door, shattering the darkness with every ounce of willed. In an instant, she was engulfed in pure light, like falling through clouds into a bright sky. She twisted through, the murmur of shadows fading, the haunting cries dissolving behind her. Instead of chains, she emerged into an open field, the sun resting warm on her skin. Distant laughter floated through the air, reminding her of moments she thought lost forever. She felt the ground beneath her surge with hope. Around her, colors bloomed: vibrant green grass, cerulean blue sky, reminiscent of a day when laughter was a reality, not a dream. And for the first time, she took a deep breath, inhaling deeply. But the shadows lingered in the corners of her vision, a reminder that the true battle wasn't over. She knew she had to face them, confront the darkness still clawing after her. The true tests awaited. She could feel Ethan, his presence still tethered somewhere between shadows and light. With newfound strength, Sara turned back, standing at the edge of something that needed resolution. She would not yield to the masks of deception that twisted her love. Heart beating like an anvil, determination blazing in her heart, all she needed was to find Ethan once more. I will save you, she shouted to the thinning shadows, taking that first step back toward the abyss. And somewhere amidst the din of chaos, a glimmer of hope responded, a flicker of the truth waiting to be unveiled. The shadows began to wane, their power thinning in the brilliance of her unwavering resolve. For love was stronger, and she could almost hear Ethan's voice whispering back, urging her forward. Will this be the end of darkness? Did the shadows hold the answers, or would freedom rise from within the light? The story might be concluding, but for Sara, every choice she made would echo into eternities, revealing the strength she never knew she possessed. Time to confront the shadows that kept them apart and find the truth. This is your moment. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Show your support. Only true fans understand the importance.